Welcome to The Chaos Antidote, a leadership podcast hosted by Jason E. Neal, author of Accidentally Aligned: How Leaders Create Value in Chaos. Through these episodes, we will be exploring real-world problems and applying solutions that reduce your chaos and help you to become accidentally aligned. Hi, everyone. This is Jason Neal, author of the book Accidentally Aligned: How Leaders Create Value in Chaos. If you haven't picked this book up today, I encourage you to go out today and pick it up on Amazon. It's now in paperback, hardback, Kindle, and new release on Audible. So go out and pick that up today. So I want to ask you a question today. As you're going into your business transformation, as you're forming your new strategy and changing things and trying to get to the place that you want to go, do you ever feel like the harder you push, the worse things get? If you do, that's not a coincidence. It's actually math, and that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit today. We're going to look into the Kingman formula, and John Kingman gave us this formula back in the 60s, and we're going to bring it forward today. I'm going to show you how to use this to help understand some things that are going on in your business, and I'm going to give you some real-life practical examples of how I've experienced this in my own life, and we're going to help put some order to your chaos, and hopefully you will walk away today having the antidote to your chaos. So let me give you the Kingman formula in plain English. So let's say your waiting time is when you're doing Kingman formula, your waiting time is roughly equal to your utilization divided by 1 over or 1 minus your utilization. So that's really important. Then you're going to multiply that by your variation factor times your normal process time. Now that sounds like a lot of craziness, but here's the thing. That first part, the utilization divided by the 1 minus utilization, is really, really important. Because as you begin to increase your utilization, what's going to happen is your variation is going to have a much bigger impact on your process lead time. This is something, it's one of the first things that I was introduced to when I was put into operations and business, transformation and things, was this understanding. Because here's what we try to do sometimes. We'll say, go standardize everything, create standards, and that's wonderful. But what we're going to look into today is how the Kingman formula works, and then some strategy about, yes, standardizing is absolutely the right thing to do, but how the method is and what you should expect to see when you start doing this. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of depth into what's going on. So let me give you a few facts here again. If you're running, let's say, at 80% utilization, which is decent, right? And you have decent variation, which is common for, an 80% utilized shop. The multiplier waiting time is about 4 times. So I'll walk through that again slower. You're running about 80% utilization. You have some decent variation, and you're going to see a waiting time multiplier of about 4x. Now, if I push that from 80% to 95%, but I don't kill the variation, I leave the variation where it is, that multiplier jumps to 19 times. So we will go from 4 times at 80% to 19 times at 95%. So when I look at that, and this is what happens. We have operational leaders, and they look at that math and they're like, well, then why would I do that? Why would I try to increase my utilization, or why would I try to go around and standardize everything? And here is where 5S becomes really, really important, right? If I'm coming, you think about this, I leave work and I leave early. I come home, let's say I come home at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm coming into the freeway, and it may not be so bad. I may be able to just kind of merge in and flow with the traffic, right? But when I start utilizing that freeway a lot and traffic gets heavy, let's say 5 or 6 p.m., I have a very different experience putting my car onto the freeway. Now, does standards and order help me during those complicated times? Certainly, yes. In fact, a lot of the variation that we see, bad drivers, right, or not clear directions, or people confused about which lane goes where and making last minute adjustments, right? You will see that variation, and it only makes that highly utilized freeway more difficult to manage. So it's kind of a picture image of what we're talking about. So when I start to standardize that, and this is what I see a lot of teams do, they'll come and ask me, and when we were setting up, a new plant and we were putting these practices into place, you only have so much capacity. So leaders would come and they would say, "Well, I know we need to standardize, but what do we standardize first? Where do we go? There's 600 different things that we're doing, and we have capacity for maybe 30. So which ones do we do, and how do we know where those things are?" And it's a great question, right? We're not going to answer that in entirety today, but these are the kind of questions you will also get as you're leading transformation. And here's where 5S becomes so great, right? You think about sort and shine, right? Set in order. And then you have standardize and sustain. So what's happening here with sort and shine and set in order, you're creating stability. And this is what I don't see happening a lot. I see a lot of teams when they get excited about lean or they get excited about transformation, like we're going to standardize everything. But they standardize instability. They standardize chaos. They take this disorder and this chaos and they say, we're just going to create a standard process for being chaotic. And that there's a huge risk with that because remember variation, where you have the variation when you push towards higher utilization, you will exponentially increase your wait time. So we have to be careful about standardizing that instability. That's what's happening. You're seeing that the Kingman formula is taking place as we do that. It's revealing itself. So 5S is huge, right? With sort and shine. Start there. Like go around and say, where do I see people looking for tools? Where do I see machines that I can't tell if their condition is good or bad? They're covered in oil and they have been for 30 years. So if there was a leak, I wouldn't know where it is. There was no way we could determine it. And the variation in the process time for fixing those situations is much larger than if you clean them and you get them in order, right? You shine them. You sort your tools, so I don't have to search through a box with 500 different things. I'm putting only the tools that I need, shadowed there where I can tell. And if something's missing, it's clear. At a visual instance, I can say something's supposed to be there and it's not. Well, hopefully it's not in the product I'm assembling, right? But I would know very quickly that something is missing. And what you're doing by these things is you're reducing variation. And as you reduce variation, and this is what I saw when I was leading one of the largest engine programs in the world for the line of work that we were in, right? And when I came through and we had toolboxes everywhere, and you would be surprised how difficult it is to get someone to give up a toolbox. That was like, I'm telling you, it was like pulling teeth with no numbing, and people would protect it like it was their child, And but I would go to the toolbox and I would look in one person's toolbox, and there would be 500, 700 tools that they had accumulated over their career, and I would ask them, "How many of these tools do you use?" "All of them." Okay, fair. I would look at the standard work and I would say, "Well, this is your standard work, so I only see that you're using 13 of these." "Well, that's not true." "Okay, well, when do you use more than 13? I use more than 13 quite often. Can you start mapping the times that you use more than 13 and start writing them down?" Because what I'm pushing into now is there's probably something they're doing outside of the current standard that's requiring them to, or they're just protecting that and saying, well, I might need it, and this might be something that I would want to do. So therefore, I want to protect these tools. Shigeo Shingo said something, and it's in this book right here. It's Nonstock Production, which is a really great book. I recommend it. He said, when people are doing something and we're looking at it, it applies to this toolbox issue, right, that we're talking about now. It's the process that you're doing, or the method, he calls it the method, times the familiarity. So if I have a method of doing something and it's relatively easy and I've done it a lot of times, then I might score that method high and score the familiarity with it high. And altogether, I might say that's a really good process. Likewise, I may have a process that's difficult, and I've done it a bunch of times, so my familiarity is good with it. So I might still pass that and say that's a good process, right? But when people do not have a great familiarity with a new process, you have that method times familiarity. The familiarity begins to lower. They do not have the trust in that idea. So that's why it's very important that we keep pushing people into new directions and keep trying it, keep letting me know where it fails. So we brought these new toolkits in, and they were shadow boards, and we shadowed only the tools that were needed, and we removed the toolbox, and it was just a terribly sensitive cultural shift, and there was a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. Those are my tools, and in many cases, we signed papers to let people take their tools home because it was so sensitive. We're like, we're not taking your tools, even though they're not yours. They belong to the company. We're going to create agreements where, in certain cases, you can have some of these because you're so attached to them, and we have to have this transformational change. And I won't say there's one certain way to do this, but it's important that, when we move in those directions, we're sensitive to those real issues that people have, those connected issues. So we brought these boards in, shadowed them, and I was waiting for these high surges as the operations leader. Like, we're going to see a lot of stuff here that's going off the rails. And I never did. I was waiting for calls like, hey, I need this tool. I used to have it, and you took it from me, and now I can't do my job. But I really didn't hear that. And we kept rolling. We kept producing engines. And I was in this period of transformation, right? And we started, we were producing about 9 engines a week. And then as changes were being made, you kind of introduce some new variation there and some new familiarity that people have to build. And there's some frustration. And so it's not uncommon. And I do want to share this because I don't think this is understood very well by a lot of operations folks. But when you make a change, you do not always see an improvement. I can tell you when we transformed, we being me and my team, when we transformed this business operation, it was huge, entire engine assembly, 3 different locations all around the world. We went from 9 and then went to 6. We actually went backwards. We lost 3 engines per week as we were making these changes. And then people started to get familiar, right? It's method times familiarity. They started building that confidence, and we got back to 9. Well, it's really difficult, when you come in and you're like, wow, I invested a lot of energy in that to get back where I was and to lose 3 engines a week for like 2 months. It's really hard, and it discourages our team. So we have to be very clear in understanding that these methods do work, but there is sometimes a teeter-totter effect that happens. Now, on that day when I came back in, had I said, well, I'm back at 9, so we're right back where we started from, I could have viewed it in that way, but we were not where we started from because now we were standing on a platform that we could go to 12. And we did go to 12 and went to 14. Then we went to 16 and we hung out at 16 for a long time. And then we went to 18 and we hung out at 18 for a long time. And then we went to 21 a week from 9 fully completed engines, no increase in headcount, no technological advancement, no staffing changes. I'm talking about this stuff, right? It's Kingman formula, it's variation, it's 5S, it's reducing variation, it's increasing utilization, it's changing and affecting the culture and building trust. It's these ideas. And sometimes people will say, your ideas seem soft. And when I hear like how to be a good listener or how to have respect for people, those ideas seem soft and primitive. Well, those ideas are variation. And I will tell you, Kingman formula, you think it applies to operations. It applies, it is actually more volatile when you apply it to people and transactional processes. When you pull people into this with emotions and the amount of variation that we're inducing into the system, it absolutely amplifies your lead times. So I will share that with you. That's why it's a system. When I share this, we're not just talking about math. I'm not coming to you as an engineer or someone that's just giving you formulas like, hey, go put this formula into place and your life will change. No, it's a system. You're going to have to change the behavior. You're going to have to change the culture. And as you're doing that, all those things are variation. It's not just process variation, your people variation as well. And as you begin to deal with those issues and build trust, you will bring the variation down. Your utilization can go up and you'll still be able to stabilize your lead times. So I want to walk through this because this is really important just to have this understanding. So when you go out, what do I do with this information? This is great, but what do I do? So when you go out, this is what I will usually do when folks will call me into a plant and they'll say, "Hey, will you come take a look at my plant?" And I'm not the lean or the transformational police, right? So I show up and I look for things. I do know some things to look for. But when I come into a plant, I will look and I will ask questions like, "Hey, what's going on? What's flowing? What's stopped? Where do I see people frustrated? When I talk to people, what are they telling me that they're frustrated about? Are they telling me that they're notifying the system and the system's not responding?" And this is what I do when I come into these systems. I will sit back and I will watch and I will say, what is the thing that the system is producing? So that is what I would recommend that you do. Just go observe. You'll be tempted to engage because it's probably your system and you feel like you have to control it. But to do this right, you don't want to control it. You want to see what the system, when uninterrupted, when there's no pressure put on it, what it's producing. And then that will show you where you might have constraints or opportunities or variation that's creeping into your process. But that system will produce what it's designed to produce. Now, here's where I see leaders struggle. They'll come in and they'll say, but we would never have designed a system to produce that. Well, we did. We did, though. And it's that humility, right? There we are again, right? Back at behaviors because they're so important. When you get away from behaviors and we start to think that this is a math problem or it's a physical operation manufacturing thing, that's where we lose it. It takes a great deal of humility to sit, and I had to do it. I had to watch my line and my frustrated employees that were yelling at me and very angry with me and thinking to myself, being the people, whether it was my predecessors or maybe even me somewhat or my leadership or whoever it was, we probably built this. And there may have been reasons for it, but we probably did this. And now my question has to be, if that is producing variation at a level that I cannot achieve the utilization that I need, what things would I have to change to get the utilization that I need? I was recently at Toyota. It was actually just this week. I was at Toyota Materials Handling, and I was walking their shop and looking through, and just a wonderful experience. But I was hearing numbers of utilization at like 95%. And because I'm, connecting it in my mind to Kingsman formula, I'm thinking to myself, but wow, that's insane because what low variation they must have to be able to run this and sustain this operation like this. And that's where we want to get. It's to where we are squeezing the system and we're floating things to the top. But then when they get to the top, right, and this is culture, or right back to culture again, what do we do with them? So we can create systems to boil this out. We can create systems to push this up to the top and foam the issues to the top. But when they get there, when they're reported and they flow up to us, what do? Do we hear it and say, I'm not too much worried about that actually because my life is good right now and I'm getting the things that I need? Or do we take the time to say, wow, that's really bad. If I were in your situation, I would probably feel that in a very different way. And I'm going to have some empathy for that and say, I probably should engage with that and help you because I wouldn't want to be there if it was me. And all these, again, right back to behavioral issues. And that's what I find real transformation is. It's an understanding of these principles, and some of them are very heavy. When you go and you start looking into the math, some of them are very heavy. But when it's also this parallel thread that runs through that says it's also the people stuff. Like, how do we reduce variation from the way that people interact with each other? How do we reduce rework when we're looking at quality? Do people have to tell each other things 3 or 4 times because there are miscommunications, or because people are speaking different languages to different personalities, right? Maybe an analytical person is talking to a person that's very behavioral in nature. Maybe a person has a high awareness of compliance and we're talking to them in people terms. How do we reduce this variation so that we can have one consistent system that is optimized and functioning in the way that we want? Why? So that we can get the antidote for our chaos, so that we can become accidentally aligned and we can create value in the chaos that we live in. If you haven't picked up a copy of my book, I encourage you to pick this up. You will not be disappointed in this. I wish when I was coming up, when I was doing these things, I wish that I had a resource like this book, someone who had ran before me and said, "Hey, I've worked on these things, I've learned these things, and I'm going to share them with you." I did not have that. So this is a resource you have. Also, check out my website, jasoneneal.com. Follow me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to have the connection. I post things on there all the time. And then YouTube, I do have a YouTube channel, so feel free to check that out. You'll find all kinds of videos on there. If you're like, hey, I only have 5 minutes a day, or only have a little break, I post shorts on there. I have all kinds of short videos on there, so you can just grab a little nugget and pick up some of this. I encourage you to check out some of these books, that I share on here from time to time. Shigeo Shingo, another one here. This is from one of my mentors. This is Flatlined by Mark DeLuzio. I would recommend you check this out. It's a really, really good book. Why Lean Transformations Fail and What to Do About It. So check out these resources, learn, listen to these podcasts, check into the YouTube website. But yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. Check this out. I hope this was helpful for you today. And let's make tomorrow better than today. Thanks again.